What's up everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So apparently the developers have planned a boss fight in their 1-month showcase with Harley Quinn. Now this is very interesting because I've been looking through comments and some people are not having it. Some people are thinking that this might be too much of a reveal, while some others are in the position where they're like, hey, as much information and content you can put in front of us, we'll be happy to take a look at it. And so I think this divide, even though it's not necessarily a big divide, because for anybody who may be averse to spoilers, you can kind of avert your eyes. You can look away unless maybe this Harley Quinn, whatever, shows its way into some kind of, trailer or an ad, then it'll probably get you. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is necessarily something that should be of a huge concern, if at all. Gotham Knights is probably maybe a bigger game than they have probably maybe shown us. Because this is kind of the argument that I have that would have them bringing all of this information out there at the onset of this game in terms of its reveal. So we can probably take this as face value, or we can say maybe they do have some other villains that they have not necessarily shown, that they possibly just want to keep under wraps so that we can unveil them as the game continues to go on. Now, if you kind of think of it, a lot of what we've seen has been in specific settings. We've seen some encounters with the Mr. Freeze mission or quest line, a part of the quest line. We've seen a little bit too regarding and surrounding the Knights making their way into Blackgate Prison. And I think that part is where you first encounter Harley Quinn. So I don't necessarily know if that's your first encounter with her, and then eventually as the story goes on, you continue to encounter her just like we're seeing with Mr. Freeze. Now, you're probably wondering, how in the world did you not catch that? Well, if you notice, the very first encounter with Mr. Freeze was just him and that big, huge freeze gun weapon of his. But then in the villains trailer yesterday with Nightwing, it seemed like Mr. Freeze had already built some kind of a huge exosuit that's some kind of a mechanical robot, and you probably get to fight him in that state again. And most of you remember that Patrick Redding had mentioned something that when you meet Mr. Freeze, all the times you get to meet him, it will be different in the sense that if you fight him at level 5, it'll be different from how you will meet and encounter him at level 15. So this brings me to the position where I think some of these bosses you will have to encounter at different stages of the game, maybe fight them and probably be defeated by them, or maybe trounced by them, or maybe they will escape and then come back even stronger in a different context but a part of the story. And this leads me to believe that there are probably and possibly more villains that we'll be encountering as this game's story unfolds. And I'll take the opportunity in this video to talk about one of the villains that I would love to see in Gotham Knights. Now, for many of you, you already know we've gotten to see so many teases and so many inferences of some of the villains in Gotham Knights. We've gotten to see the Court of Owls. We've gotten to see even the Penguin himself. We even got to see Harley Quinn just recently, Clayface, and Mr. Freeze, of all the first ones that we've actually got to see. But one villain comes to mind when it comes to Gotham Knights, and I think this would probably be the best villain to hide of all of them, and that is Deathstroke. Now, Deathstroke is a really strong contender for me in terms of a character and a villain that would probably be one of those hidden villains in this entire game. If you look through the canon of the Bat family, you look through the Suicide Squad, you look at the relationship that this particular villain has had with Batman and even the Bat Kids, I think there is a lot of reason to keep a character like this under wraps while showcasing these others and eventually unveil him to be a bigger surprise. One of my longtime audience members was talking to me on Twitter about villains that they would like to see. And for me, I think personally, this is the one villain that I think will really change this entire conversation around to a place where I'm probably thinking how many times I'm going to want to play Gotham Knights. Now, why this particular character? Well, Deathstroke was one of those characters that really did surprise you the moment they brought him into the equation in Arkham Origins. This was the story that was actually written for the Arkham series and was written and developed by Warner Brothers Games Montreal. Now, yes, Batman had all of these top tier assassins, villains that were coming after him, but there was nothing quite like the way you encountered Deathstroke. You encountered him in the context of the Penguin, and you had this very unique boss fight with him. Now, it wasn't necessarily the most amazing thing, but it was a boss fight that really did stand out in the entire game. It's one whom I can say, if everybody who's played the game can think back and remember, it was like the Mr. Freeze of Arkham City in a sense, because the character took you by surprise, and somehow you had to relearn an entire different fight strategy than you did with most of the other characters in order for you to be able to deal with him. And I don't know necessarily if we have a character like this in Gotham Knights, and I'm certain that they're probably going to go ahead and hide, or at least keep a lot of the details of a character like this, or maybe go ahead and showcase the character. Because if you go back and even look at the Arkham Origins reveal trailer, you'll see that it was actually an encounter between Deathstroke, Batman, and even Deadshot, because all of these characters were actually coming after Batman in the game. So the reveal trailers have always been a medium to actually showcase the different villains, and this is not new with Batman games. So whichever concerns the community might have, I don't think it's out of character if you were to actually, consider how other Batman games have actually been unveiled in the past. But again, you think about all of this and think about even the hidden symbols that are still on the website that have not been updated. There's room for more. We haven't seen anything about the League of Assassins so far, even though that was one of the villain groups that we had hypothesized a while ago that would be in the game. So I'm thinking this is another villain group or another set of villains that we might get to see as the game unfolds, but not necessarily see in all of these reveals. So if they're showing us these three head on, or maybe 4 or 5, depending on how many you consider with all of the teases, I think there might be much more, because this studio is known for giving a huge plethora of villains that you have to deal with in their games. I mean, the one game that they've made had a very solid lineup, even though it's probably not the most, celebrated of the Arkham games. It is still one of my favorite down the road. So the entire conversation about villains actually has to go to the point where we need to be looking carefully at the possible villains that have not yet been shown, and not necessarily be bothered by these that are being shown. Because to me, I think this is kind of like a smoke screen. It's a good smoke screen, yes, but I think there's a lot more underneath the surface, because many of you are starting to point out to, different facets of the shots from the trailers, and you're pointing out teases to all kinds of other villains that we missed. And I don't know exactly if this team is actually following this ambition, but I'm telling you, it will be nice for them to actually drop an entire rogue gallery that is over a dozen villains that you encounter, or even much more than that. And even potentially this can bleed into DLC expansion-like territory and make for this universe something of a bigger package than we even expect it to be. But I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Which villains would you like to see in Gotham Knights that has not yet been revealed or teased? Let me hear your thoughts in the comments below. Peace out.